Well, there's no question. I think the elevation of collegiate golf has been growing since the 50s, 40s. Now, you're the historian, so you know Yale has all those national championships to rest upon, and of course, those were in the 40s, and then University of Houston came along late 50s, 60s, and 70s, and really dominated. And then a young Mike Holder took over kind of mid 70s-ish, or maybe late 70s, and he took over there at Oklahoma State. He had his dominating run for essentially 20 years. And since then, the elevation of collegiate golf has encompassed kind of a tremendous amount of growth, but also a lot more parity.
There's no doubt. There's so many more good teams now than there were 25 years ago when I first got in. When I first got in, you probably had 10 or 12 teams that probably had a realistic chance at competing for a national championship. And I mean, it's a lot deeper than that now. And just the fact that schools are now putting a lot of money into facilities, which they weren't doing back then to speak of. And I mean, you've seen the facilities change at the University of Texas. We could go down a list of about 50 or 60 schools that have markedly changed their facilities during that same time as well. But also, when you were walking fairways, when you first got to Texas, you didn't have to recruit it against as many schools as you have to recruit against now. It's changed. I mean, all across the board. It's a much, much more competitive situation.
It is. You know, the core, and you and I have the commonality with Mike Holder in our lives. Myself, because when I took it to New Mexico, I wanted to quickly try to elevate the program. And our good friend Cricket Mush had stepped out of coaching. He had been the head coach at the University of Texas, El Paso. And actually, I think it was 1989, he was the National Coach of the Year. And you can funnel down to his success. And again, it was Mike Holder who befriended him and gave him a tremendous amount of information, and he followed it to a T. And as a result, the University of Texas El Paso was one of the best teams in the nation. Showed up looking good, and really for me, that was more of a model for our New Mexico program than any other program. I mean, we couldn't aspire initially to what Oklahoma State had done at that time frame, but we could aspire to what Cricket Mush had done at the University of Texas El Paso. And I'm talking about in the mid to late 80s. And what he did is he aligned himself with Mike Holder, started walking around with him at recruiting sites. And you can imagine it's kind of like hanging around somebody who has tremendous success, and not necessarily taking the leftovers, but taking the ones that don't quite measure up to that program. And then next thing you know, you've got this really dynamic program. That's what UTEP did. And I think we did something similar at New Mexico. I ended up doing Mike Holder's camp. I would encourage, like you do, Mike, young coaches to go to camps and learn how to teach, but also just to hang around maybe older successful coaches that might have some great ideas for younger guys. But the bottom line is there's 300 Division I programs right now or more, and I think about 100 of them are funded to win. And what I mean by that, they've got great tournaments, they've got great facilities, they travel properly in a nice way. But when you get right down to it, it's all kind of emanated out of Stillwater, Oklahoma.